Up, you heathens and demons, you beautiful, blasphemous people. Welcome back to A Raging Atheist. I have my friend Justin here. Justin Khoe, right? Khoe. Yeah, I always get that part messed up. No longer that Christian vlogger. What's up? Well, actually, I'll toss it over to Ali, my moderator, who, even though it's just a one-on-one, one-on-two, she still moderates. So what's up, Ali?
Well, as close to moderating as like participating in the discussion and randomly throwing annoying questions at your guest can be considered moderating. So Justin actually wanted to talk about the recent incident involving a gentleman deciding to forgive his brother's murderer during the trial. So I will hand it off to Justin and let him go ahead and tell the story for everybody, victim and perp's names and everything else.
Cool. So I'll be honest, I didn't go super in depth about the full story, largely because I want to hear your guys' responses and reactions to it. But as I understand it, there was a young man by the name of Botham. How did we decide that we're going to pronounce that? I'm sorry.
Apparently, it's a biblical name. It said Botham when I looked up the pronunciation.
Man, I feel like as the resident Christian, I should have known that. Botham Jean, young black man who was in his own apartment chilling, I think eating food, as the story is told, when a young white female cop, Amber Guyger, comes home from work, mistakenly believes that she's opening the apartment door to her own apartments, and little did she realize that she was actually opening up the floor above or below her or something along those lines, and ends up walking into Botham's apartments. She, in a panic, allegedly believed that he was intruding in her home. She pulled her firearm and shot him multiple times, and over the course of the experience, unfortunately, Botham passed away. And so she went to trial. I think the story is that she got something like 10 years sentence. And during some of the final comments of family members would stand up and address, one reaction in particular went viral, and it was is it the older brother? Is that the story?
Yeah, it was the older brother, I believe. Though there's apparently some breaking news related to that. Apparently, one of the leading witnesses was killed.
Yeah, I saw that as well.
Yeah, so, I was just seeing that part. I don't know too much about that part yet.
So what I understand is that the older brother, kind of controversial, but went viral. Basically, while up on the area where the witnesses sit or whatever the case is, addressing the cop, the killer, tells basically, I forgive you. I want the best for your life. He says, I'm speaking for myself, not my family, but I love you like anyone else, and I forgive you. And then goes as far to say, my hope for you, and this I think what my brother would want, is that you would come to accept Jesus for yourself, and that you would experience a good life, or something to that effect. And then I think the most emotional part of the story, he asks the judge if he can give his brother's killer a hug. And the judge says yes, so he comes off the stand. They embrace, and Amber Guyger, the killer, basically erupts into sobbing. And later that day, the judge comes and I don't know if she embraces or not, but basically
she gave the brother a hug.
Mm-hmm. She gave the brother a hug, but not the killer, correct?
I think she also gave the killer a hug and gave her a Bible.
Yeah, I gave her personal Bible. And
encourages her to consider her life choices.
Consider Jesus, and I think even points her to John 3:16, start there, the whole thing. And then, like you just mentioned, the breaking news is that one of the young men who testified against the cop 10 days after taking the stand was apparently gunned down, getting out of his own car, getting shot in the mouth and I think the chest, and was killed.
Well, apparently they've arrested two out of three identified suspects related to that particular shooting, but that's not necessarily the point of our discussion. I noticed that it was breaking news when I was looking for details on the specific thing we're talking about, and it was just everywhere on my news feed, within the last hour.
Yeah, I've been seeing it everywhere. I hadn't realized they've gotten two of the suspects yet. So yeah, that's something that's a part of the story that I'll be continuing to look at, because I have thought about covering this story with some edited content. So yeah, I have a lot of opinions. Before we get into the judge giving the Bible, Ali, do you have I'll let you go first on your opinions of the great act of forgiveness, because that's one thing I think should be emphasized is she killed this man's brother. And whatever your ideology is, if you can find forgiveness in your heart for that, I think that speaks a lot to you as a person. So that's one thing that I do want to highlight before I get into some of the points that I'm going to make, is that I find what this young man did to be admirable. Now, I'm going to talk about some of the issues I have with it as well, but I don't want those issues to take away from the fact that what he just did, and he did it from his Christian belief system, is what allowed him to get there. So I want to make that clear as well, is admirable, and it should be something that's applauded. So yeah, but Ali, do you have thoughts on it?
Well, I mean, we talked about it a little bit prior to the stream when I was doing some research on the situation, because you sprung the topic of conversation on me kind of at the last minute.
Yeah, I forgot to tell Ali what we were talking about.
Everyone else knows except for the moderator.
Yeah, I told her you were coming, and so she was like, cool, I'm going to ask him questions based on our last conversation. I'm like, wait, you can't, because we're talking about this.
And I literally found this out like 3 hours ago, so I was like, fuck, I gotta go do some research. But no, I agree with Naka, and he took the words right out of my mouth. I have a lot of admiration for people who, for good or ill, live their particular belief systems. I talk a lot about being Christ-like rather than just dogmatically Christian. It's something that, being a pagan, I'm a virtue ethicist. I tend to focus more on someone's character and, the consequences of any individual decision, rather than this black and white idea of good and evil that a lot of other, people tend to focus on. And so seeing this person standing so strongly by his individual beliefs, even though from a historical context, there may be some issues with that regarding the way that race has been handled in this country and other things, as an individual and as an individual act, I think that that's a very powerful story. This guy hugged his brother's murderer and said, I forgive you. And I agree with what his mother said in an interview. Forgiveness is more for the forgiver than it is for the forgiven. It's an act that frees you psychologically from carrying the burden of anger and hatred and from a grudge. Grudges are like taking poison and expecting the person you're pissed off at to die. It takes a lot of strength to do that during a freaking trial, and I think that there's a lot of power in that. Now, adding the proselytization on top of it, maybe less so. As a pagan, I don't really appreciate proselytization at all. But
sorry,
the actual act
a word I'm not familiar with.
Proselytization means to try to spread your
Gotcha. Sorry,
to try to spread your faith.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm. So the fact that he used it also as a way to proselytize, and again, I'm going to have a lot of opinions about the judge too, was something that I take an issue with. But the actual act itself, I think, is admirable. And I think that it is a very strong statement that, yes, this is somebody who is very, principled, not just in their faith, but in living out what they believe are the values of said faith.
Yeah, all right. And I agree with everything that Ali just said. And so as I get into what I'm going to go into, I don't want to take away or bash him in any way, because he has taken a lot of hate for his action, and that should be put out there. I don't think that that's right. I think that it's admirable, and I know some in the chat are disagreeing, but I do think, personally, if I could forgive somebody that killed my brother, I think that shows a tremendous amount of compassion. But I have some issues because I don't think it's justified. I don't think that he should have forgiven her. And it's because of this. Now, the way that her apartment building is set up, it's actually quite easy for what happened to have happened. As I understand it, each floor is set up exactly the same. So if you mistakenly get off on the wrong floor, it's very easy to think that the apartment above or below you is actually your apartment. So I don't really take away that from her, although I still think the moment she opened that door or had trouble opening the door, if it was locked, I'm not sure. I don't know that whether or not it was locked or not. When she saw immediately upon entering, unless she was drunk, she would have noticed that it was a different apartment.
Yeah.
I know that there was a throw rug right there that shouldn't have been. There was a table there that she didn't have in her apartment. So immediately she should have known it wasn't her apartment. Now, she had said that he rushed her, which the facts just doesn't bear out. She shot him.
The witness testimony also appeared to deny that idea.
Well, and I mean,
even if he did, I mean, completely justified. If some random person busts open your door,
yeah,
like,
but he
you
didn't
got a right to defend yourself. But
he was sitting on the couch.
He didn't, which seems to be the fact of it.
Yeah, he was sitting on the couch when she opened fire. And she could have saved his life had she just performed the first aid that she knew as a police officer. Instead, she panicked and she tried to cover it up.
Yeah, I don't think any one of us or anyone that I'm aware of is in any way trying to defend her action.
Yeah, and I don't think anybody is. I do think that some people are overlooking it or giving her the benefit of the doubt because she's had some fairly sincere moments in the courtroom where she has shown contrition and remorse, and it's without a doubt genuine. It's not an act. You can watch it.
I would say that too. I watched I think 3 clips, and each one, from what I could tell, just on the outside, did seem genuine.
Yeah, they seem very genuine.
Still a murderer.
It's still a murderer, and still there's this issue that she was a white cop that killed a black man. And we have that issue in this country. So the other thing I want to talk about is Black Christianity in this country, because I think it's something that needs to be talked about. And usually people that look like me are afraid to talk about it. I'm not one of those people. I'm just not afraid to talk about this type of shit. So the African-American slave in this country was instilled with a certain type of Christianity to make them more docile and to make them not rebel against their masters. So
hey, before you go too deep, I wanted to respond to something the chat was saying. I want to clarify what I said about the being admirable. What I meant with that when I said that this is admirable is that when somebody has a very strong core set of principled beliefs, particularly again the Christ-like versus Christian thing, sticking to that even in the face of something this horrendous, I think is the admirable thing. I think it shows a great deal of grit. That's what I was trying to say. Whether or not the forgiveness was justified is a completely different conversation. It's, but that's what I was trying to say. Yeah.
And again, I do want to reiterate, because I'm right here with Ali on that, and I'm right here with Justin on that. I'm not trying to take away the man's act. I don't think I could do it. And I'm sure that, we all have our opinions about this case, and I've just laid out mine. I have severe opinions about this case. I followed it fairly closely ever since the moment it happened, because this is one of my political things that I actually follow is white cop crime on black people. It's one of my main passions politically. So yeah, I'm not trying to take away from him by any means, but I think it speaks to this thing in our society. We saw it with Dylan Ruth, where a young white extremist walks into a black church, kills 6 people, and those people were willing to forgive him. We see this a lot in the black community. We don't see this so much from the white community when it's black people. And that is, to me, is something that needs to be talked about in our society. Well, why do we see it from black people? And as I was saying, it's because we instilled this certain type of Christianity into the black slave, and it still has residual effects today. For instance,
it looked like Justin wanted to say something.
Oh yeah, do you have something to say, Justin?
Yeah, I heard this same criticism this last week. That we actually do have seemingly multiple examples of the black community responding in this amazing forgiveness towards people who have done horrendous things against them. And I want to say, at least for me, I affirm that as a genuine virtue. It's nothing but good in my virtue system, obviously as a Christian. But yeah, I did notice that, wow, yeah, it doesn't seem like it's happening the other direction.
Yeah,
And I don't know if that's just a media play, and it's part of the way that, you know, the media tries to continue to further whatever narratives are there, or maybe just genuinely, for whatever reason, the Black community happens to be
and
more
that is a good
forgiving.
point. That is a good point, because just because we don't see it as often doesn't mean it doesn't happen. And I know I have seen actually specific instances where white people did forgive the Black murderers, you know. So like, I'm not saying that it never happens. It just does seem to happen more with the Black community. And I know that there are Black Christian preachers out there talking about the slave culture and the religion and where they get this from. And this is primarily where I got this research from as I was looking into this, because I've been looking into this for a while. But as I said, like when you look like me, this is a very sensitive topic to approach. And it's one that I've been hesitant to, but I'm going to talk about it tonight because this case, I think, really brings out the point of it. And that is, otherworldliness was really pushed onto the slaves. And that pretty much is, you know, don't worry about this life because you're going to get everything you want in the next life. And that was drilled home into them so they could accept the terrible living situations that they were put into. Another thing was being content with their life now, which would feed back into the otherworldliness. And then another main emphasis on the religion that they forced on the slaves was forgiveness. Because if you could forgive your slave owner for the things they were doing to you, then you wouldn't rebel against them. And that forgiveness has stayed in the Black community ever since. And if you actually look at the Black community compared to other demographics, the Black community is still strongly religious. Very few have fallen off of that religion in that community, to where white people, more and more white people, are becoming agnostic, atheists, falling away from Christianity. In the Black community, it's staying strong. Mm-hmm. So I think that is an element to why maybe he did what he did, or how he was able to get there. But again, I don't want to take away from the fact that he was able to get there. I couldn't do it. If somebody killed my brother, I would want retribution. You know, that's just me.
You know, I think that in this story, we see two, like in my opinion, beautiful examples of what it actually looks like to live out the message of Jesus Christ. The more obvious example of what it looks like to live that out is seen with the older brother, who literally is willing to forgive the most horrendous act against someone that he loves. I think that to me captures the essence of what Christianity teaches. And I would also say in the same breath that the other example of where we actually see Jesus at work is also with the mother calling for justice, saying that there is a gross wrong and evil in the way that the system has oppressed a people. I think she was saying something along those lines of, like, forgiveness is not meant to be confused with absolving the guilt or the punishment. And so, like, there is an absolute space for the demand for justice.
The quote that I saw from her said specifically, forgiveness is on the part of the forgiver. It's up to the forgiven what they do with it.
Yeah, I would say that. But I think what she's calling for is this idea of justice, and especially for those who are mistreated. And I see that at the core of what Jesus was about. In the Jewish society, for example, poor people, sick people, women, and pretty much anyone who wasn't Jewish was seen as outsiders, as second-class citizens in the eyes of the religious elite. And what Jesus did is flip that all around, saying, no, like, that's actually not the way it is. Your mission and your calling is to actually be the voice for those who don't have a voice. And so I actually see Jesus twice in this life story, both in the forgiveness component as well as the demand and the working for justice.
Yeah, I can totally see it, and I can see where this is a good story in some ways. When you look at that context of the brother and the mother being compassionate and wanting justice. Sorry, I don't know if everybody heard that, but that is Facebook. Let's turn it off. Yeah. But with the brother finding compassion, with the mother having compassion, but calling for justice, I do think that we have yet another story of where justice really isn't being served. I think that if you had a black man that had murdered a white cop in cold blood in her apartment, sitting on her couch,
game over.
Yeah, I mean, if they didn't put him to death, he's going to spend the rest of his life in prison. To where she is only getting 10 years. Everybody's saying that it's not enough. And I have to wonder, because she did appeal to God quite a few times throughout the trial. They had that really warm moment where the brother forgave her, where the judge, and we're going to talk about the judge, because that's one thing about the story that me and Allie both have a very big problem with. But with that judge coming down, giving her Bible, telling her to basically find Jesus again and to rectify the wrongs that she's committed. I'm not sure if the jury decided her sentence or if the judge decided it.
I read something about that. I mean, if it's wrong, yeah. I my bad. But what I read was that the prosecutor asked for something like 25, 26 years because that would have been the age that he would be today, or something along those lines. It was like in the mid-20s, and the jury decided on 10. And then I believe the family stated that they accepted the jury's decision. I don't know if that means all the family or what accepting means or all that kind of stuff, but that's what I did read.
So I have to wonder, though, because in this country is still primarily a Christian country. Most of the people in that jury was probably Christian. If that didn't appeal to their heartstrings, seeing that display in the middle of the courtroom, if that influenced their decision to only give her 10 years, that's one thing.
Is that the order of how it happened? Does the testimonies go before sentencing, or does sentencing go before? I don't know.
I'm fairly certain that the sentencing came after, because I seen the story of him hugging her, and then I think a day later I heard about the 10 years.
Okay.
So I could be wrong about that, though. Don't quote me on that. That's one part of the story that, like, I'm not familiar with whether it was the judge or the jury that decided the time. It seems kind of fast for the jury to have decided the time. Mm-hmm. But unless they had this had come to a consensus or whatever.
Well, according to the article that I'm reading from NBC, it was the jury that decided to the sentence. The prosecutors looked for 28 years. They presented apparently a bunch of racist text messages and like police punishment records and other things that proved that there very well could have been a racial motivation for the attack. But the jury, I guess, said that they had trouble with feeling that she, quote, deserved 28 years behind bars. One of them talked about, like it didn't seem like Botham would have wanted her, or Botham would have wanted her to do an eye for an eye. That was the quote that somebody said. And I can post the article that I'm reading in the chat if anybody's interested in it.
So I have a question. Let's imagine that there was a way for us to actually know Botham's will. Like let's imagine that he was more in line with his brother as opposed to his mother's desire, in the sense that he was more willing to say, yeah, no, not an eye for an eye. I don't think that it should be 28 years or whatever the case is. Let's just, like, for the thought experiment, imagine that's the case. If you're in the jury, do you listen to that, or do you disregard that? If, like, you personally are that?
I mean, honestly, there's a reason why they have minimum sentencing guidelines and, like, guidelines overall for the law, and the reason why the victims themselves, even in civil cases, aren't the ones that decide the sentencing. Like, there's a reason why there's standards and such. People who are wronged generally aren't necessarily in the correct mindset to decide what a proper punishment is.
Oh, interesting. And I guess that would work both on the more lenient side as well as the more harsh side.
Correct.
Yeah, and I just don't think that it really should matter. That this, let's be honest, this attractive white woman is going to get sympathy, and it shouldn't matter. As I said, if it was the other way around and it was a black man that killed just a white woman, not even a cop, they wouldn't get that sympathy. The courts would not take that into consideration.
Right.
You know, so this it all speaks to these lines of race in this country, how people don't want to talk about race in this country, how white people like to think that it doesn't exist. Black people scream till their heads fall off, and then you have white people saying, "Look at those extremists." You know, it's a sad situation in this country. I don't want to take away from the story, though, that he was able to find that forgiveness, because I think forgiveness is important. I would want to, like, I honestly think that I can forgive anybody for pretty much anything. Like, no matter, like, I often use Matt Powell as an example of many things, but he's done a lot of harm to me. And I still interact with the guy. I still talk to him. I still give him chances. You know, like, he can make me mad, and then a week later, I'm not mad anymore. It's just Matt being mad. That's forgiveness. That's like it. As Ali said, you get rid of that burden. You're not carrying it around with you, and I appreciate that. But I do think that this story is so nuanced. You know, like, because you can look at this story and you could be like, "Wow, that's great," and what he did was awesome. And then you can look at the story and say, wow, this is a very, very sad example of the state of our country, you know, and the fact that a lot of people are talking about the fact that she didn't get very much time in comparison of the crime. It does seem like more and more people are talking of this is what went viral from all of it. And I think it should go viral. But at the same time, I think that the discussion, you know, about, you know, the discussion about race in this country, that's
Speaking
what
of
trial should have really been centered around, because they really try to take away the fact that this was a racial crime on her part, when I think most of the evidence suggests that it was.
Speaking of racial diversity, really quick, John asked me what the makeup of the jury was, and I posted an article in the chat, but I wanted to read off really quick a quote from it about the racial makeup of the jury. The jury that decided Guyger's fate was perhaps most notable because it was diverse. The 12 jury members plus 4 alternates included 7 black members, 5 non-black people of color, and 4 white members. 12 members of the entire pool were women, and the other 4 were men. So apparently the jury was majority people of color.
Wow.
Yeah, I think that throws a little dynamic into it that I wasn't aware of. I
think about that. You had made a point about, you know, the black community because of what, like, the way that they've been oppressed and the version of Christianity that's been pushed on them. They're more forgiving, but I would
and that was a version of Christianity a long time in the past that
Sure.
isn't utilized anymore. It's not like they had that same version anymore.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess if I had to guess how a majority black jury would have leaned, I would have guessed a more harsh penalty because it's one of their own.
Mm-hmm. Me too, and it's a classic case of, in their eyes, a white cop killing another black man.
Yeah, and so, you know, I don't know, as far as like the narrative is considered, oh, we finally got someone that we can pin something on, like make an example. But
yeah, I think it seemed
to be a different example. So I don't know. I mean, I wasn't there I wasn't there for any of the case, but it's just interesting that that's who made the decision there.
Yeah. I think that's viable information.
What's also interesting, though, is apparently it's extremely rare for these sorts of convictions to happen for police officers. Yeah. So the fact that she was even convicted was a big deal.
Well, yeah, and that's the other thing. I forgot to mention that. So thank you, Ali. Yeah, this rarely happens. Like, this is, as somebody that that watches this and follows this along, this has been a long time political fight for me. I've been a long time Black Lives Matter supporter, and I've taken some heat for that, you know, just by the nature of my skin color. But I stand strong in that, and I stand strong in the issue. And you're right, Ali. It's very rare when you get a conviction of a cop killing a black man. Usually, the system overlooks them. Their brothers behind the badge protect them. This is something that we have to deal with in this country, because when a segment of your population doesn't feel protected by the people that's supposed to be protecting them, you have an issue. And I think that we're having the conversations that's going to lead to resolution of this finally. I mean, it only took like 300 years. So we're finally starting to get there. So I see a lot of progress, and I don't want to be a Debbie Downer, because like I said, like, I think that the shining example out of the story should be the brother. And you should take positives from negatives when you can get them. So like that should be the story. I just wanted to mainly, like, when you brought this to me, at first I was like, yeah, this is going to be very easy for me and Justin to kind of bro out together on. But then as I looked into it with more nuance, and I was like, oh shit. So I'm gonna have to bring up the whole slave thing.
So now that we've had the happy part, unfortunately, Justin, if you want to have a moment to respond, because Knox kind of taken up most of the airtime, and I haven't given you a chance to talk too much.
Yeah, I will shut up and let you talk, and then let Ali bring in the judge issue.
Yeah, I was about to say, we're at about the halfway point, so that's a pretty good part to have an atheist and a pagan transition at some point to talking about, violations of separation of church and state and da-da-da.
100%.
But I want to give you a chance to talk on, like, to kind of respond to what Knox's been saying, and, to weigh in your opinions on the jury decision and on, like, police brutality and things like that, because like, this is a pretty serious issue and you haven't gotten to talk much.
No, and that's fine. I'm absolutely happy to hear what you guys are thinking. And, I think the more that we get to listen to each other, like, that's going to be really valuable, period. So I'm not opposed to hearing you guys out, and I appreciate you guys being willing to share. I actually have a question, and I'm curious what you guys think about it. Like, is this type of okay, so Knox said he feels like he could forgive anyone. He talked about Matt, and then you interjected the statistics on the jury buildup. But I felt like that was leading somewhere, and I'm curious where that was leading for you, Knox. If that was leading to that, you feel like you could also do that if you were in that position, or is it that you hope that you could do that if you were in that position, or oh heck no, like, I would never, and this is not something that I would ever hope would happen for me?
I would aspire to be that forgiving. I don't think that I could be, especially with the situations of the case. But I would aspire. Like, I truly, as Ali said, I think when you have anger or rage, I'm a dealer of rage. If you don't get it out of your system, if you don't let it go, then it becomes a poison inside of you. So like, I wouldn't want to carry that poison. Like, say if my brother were to die, one of my younger brothers, I would want to remember the good things about his life and not the way that he died. And I would hope to be able to give that up. That being said, I don't think that I could find the level of compassion this man found. And it's not the fact that I don't have God. It's just that me personally, I would not be satisfied with the situations leading up to my brother's death. Until I could be satisfied with that, I don't think I could bring myself to forgiving. But I would aspire to.
Yeah, and I wouldn't, even if like, God forbid that you were ever, or universe forbid, or nothing forbid. I don't know what's the proper PC term in this chat room.
Yeah, I usually say universe.
Justin, like, you're free to speak from your POV. Like, when you're here as a guest, like, you can speak freely. I've said God's forbid before, and it doesn't even phase Knock.
I get
my
it.
audience might give you a hard time, but
I'm saying that tongue in cheek. I totally understand that I'm free to say that, and I'm just kind of teasing. God forbid you would ever have to be put in that position where you lose someone like that. I would never want that on you. But even if you couldn't forgive them, couldn't work yourself up to that, I wouldn't hold any judgment against that. Like, yeah, I understand. I get it. And I think that, the vast majority of the church would echo what you just said, Knock, that this is something that they would aspire to. But if they're honest and real, probably wouldn't be happening anytime soon. At least not in the moment. Maybe after years of therapy, whatever the case is, they can possibly get to that.
That's the other thing too, is like, we saw that moment, right? But what happens tomorrow when he wakes up without his brother?
Yeah,
I'm sure that there's going to be moments to where he's going to have a lot of rage and anger towards her. So just because he's forgiven her doesn't mean that his mental journey's over, or that she's absolved of guilt by any means.
Totally. So I remember a couple years ago hearing like the first whispers of these types of stories, because they've happened multiple times over the years. You know, so and so comes in and shoots up a bunch of people. They're at a prayer meeting, they're at a church. Actually, a lot of times I hear these stories. They're within the realms of religious gatherings, whether it's a mosque or a synagogue or whatever the case is. And I've heard multiple times the stories of those who lost loved ones in those hate crimes, in those murders, whether they were Christian, whether they were Jewish or Muslim or fill in the blank, whatever religious system, doing this thing of actually forgiving the murderer. And I remember hearing those stories and thinking about them like, wow, that's incredible. I don't think I could ever get there, but I would love to be that one day. And so something happened to me. What was this? Maybe 5 years ago? Yeah, just about 5 years ago. I was coming home from work. I don't know if I told you this story, Knock, when we were hanging out in Michigan. I was coming home from work and I was taking an electric longboard home, and this young black man came out of nowhere. And long story short, I could tell the whole story, but the long story short is this black guy just came out of nowhere and just sucker punched me in the face and assaulted me, and I got jumped, basically, is the story. All my stuff went flying everywhere, camera, computer, everything I use for work and all these different kinds of things. And to my surprise, the guy didn't take my wallet, my phone, nothing, just knocked me out basically and took off running, laughing. And, I ended up having to go to the hospital, getting stitches on my lip. My shoulder got dislocated, ended up needing to have surgery. And it's been like a year and a half in rehab and all these different things. And, my background is not the kind of person that ever was a forgiving person. I never was the kind of person who ever got accused of being compassionate or patient or any of those kinds of things. Exactly the opposite. And I remember that moment of hitting the ground after getting knocked off the board. And you know how they say like time slows down and you have like all these thoughts like in a split second? I remember just thinking immediately, I hope they catch this guy. But the motivation behind them catching the guy wasn't, man, I hope they catch him so I can, punch him back, or so that he can go to prison, or so that he can get punished, or any of these kinds of things. But the entire motivation for why my heart wanted him to be caught was actually so I could have a conversation with him, to be able to tell him, listen, dude, what you did is wrong. It's clearly caused pain. It's caused a lot of anguish in my life. But I want you to know that I forgive you. Like, this is the conversation playing in my head in that half second. I forgive you. I want you to know that I don't hold it against you. And also that like, I don't know if you've ever had anyone tell you this, but you're better than this. Like, you're not the sum of your circumstances or the things that have, you're more than your bad choices. Like, you are important. You have value. And like, there's this desire to be there for this young man, and to not only absolve, but also to maybe for the first time in his life, I don't know, this is the narrative that's in my mind, whether it's true or not, to be someone in his corner, to say, listen, I get it. I know what it's like to be alone, to have no hope for a future. And I wanted to be one of these people that could speak life into this guy's life. And that all happened before I even got back up. And I always thought that forgiveness in some of these more serious circumstances, and obviously I'm not trying to equate this with the murder or anything like that, or my experience with this older brother's experience. But what I saw was I always thought that forgiveness was something that I had to put on, that this was something that I would have to grit my teeth and really work hard to. I'd have to line up my feelings with my beliefs and then exercise grit to live out my beliefs over and against what my heart truly wanted, which was retribution. And what I found in the moment was something that actually caught me off guard, was that in the moment, my heart was different than I thought it would be. And that forgiveness came naturally and it overflowed. And it was something that I just really wanted to do, just because. And I wonder if that's what the experience was like for the brother. I've had other experiences, ones that I haven't quite gone public with, as far as gross injustices and wrong that's been done to me in the past. And I'll just say the TLDR of it, as I've experienced many forms of abuse as a young person. And it's even overflowed to the extent that to the person who has wronged me in these ways, I literally don't hold any malice towards them. My heart is the same in this respect, that I just want the best for this person. I want them to know that they're forgiven from me, but also to like, it's the same thing. And it's been so weird to actually experience that within myself, because that's not who I ever was.
So
yeah, I think it's a part of growing, becoming a man, an adult, a better person. But go ahead, Ali.
I was just going to ask, does it matter if the person knows that you forgive them or not?
I don't think so. And I've actually had this conversation with someone else before, that you can actually forgive them without ever telling them. But in my unique experiences, not this to say anything about anyone else, my desire is actually to communicate that to the person.
Yeah, I think that communication is important, an important part of it. Like, because even if you forgive them silently, that it's still forgiveness, and you know it. But I think the act of releasing that forgiveness is important. So looking that person that did you harm in the eye and saying, "I forgive you," there's something to that to where forgiveness is for the forgiver. There's something in that interaction that's for both of you.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think that it is a huge part of it. Before we get into the judge, Ali, I do want to say, like, I think that it's important I'm not taking away from this particular instance or even what happened to you. I don't think you told me about it in Michigan, but I do remember a video you made about that situation.
A couple years ago.
Yeah. I watch a lot of his videos.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Well, when I find a refreshing Christian that I can actually listen to and not like want to have that gut reaction of, oh my, what am I listening to? It's refreshing. So I've often reviewed some of your videos as my example of, of what I consider a good Christian to be, somebody that the raging atheist doesn't need to rage at. Even though my first time I did go at you pretty hard.
First two times you were a little rough.
Yeah, I was a little rough the first couple times. But I got to know you, and you forgave me for some of the horrible things I said without ever meeting me. I think it's important, but I do have sometimes an issue with forgiveness. So like in the instance of Dylan Ruth, I don't think that those churchgoers should have at least been public with their forgiveness. Because in that instance, you're not just forgiving a person, but an ideology that is harmful. He has a very, very extreme right-wing extremism that led him to do what he did, and it's centered around white supremacy. And when you forgive him for that, then you're really giving, in my opinion, justification for other people to go and do it. So
yes, so that's where I disagree with you. I don't think that forgiveness is in the least bit a justification for anything. In the case of my assault, I would absolutely still say that this young man should suffer whatever punishment that the local authorities deem necessary. I would even say that as far as the other experience that I have alluded to, that there is a punishment, there is a cause and effect, and I'm not trying at all to release anyone from that. I think forgiveness has nothing to do with the consequences of an act. I think that those two are separate, that you can forgive someone.
I agree.
So that's where I push back on. And here's a question from Santa Claus in the chat, but why forgive those who enjoyed harming you? And to me, it comes down to really what forgiveness can do. I really believe that forgiveness is one of the most powerful tools, if we say. I would even say that this, like, if we're talking about the fight for a good society, a fight for change, I actually do believe that forgiveness is one of the most powerful weapons to accomplish an end.
I agree too. I think that if our country wants to come together ever again, that both sides are gonna have to learn how to forgive each other.
100%. And so I think that this is why, like, even in these, you mentioned the other circumstance where your caution would be against publicly forgiving. I think the fact that they could genuinely and authentically publicly forgive, like that is a massive step forward in accomplishing the very restitution that we all want. Because none of us really down low, none of us want division, none of us want anger, none of us want strife and hatred. We want all the same thing. We want to live in harmony and peace with people who might see the world differently, but at least we get along and we love each other. And if that's the goal that we're shooting for, the way that we get there is having the capacity to look past each other's faults and see the best in each other when everyone else will only see the worst. So why forgiveness?
Justin, do you mind if I? Sure. I would just, there was a comment that I wanted to highlight that kind of is on the same train as what you're saying.
Awesome. And I'd love to hear that. If you don't mind me just finishing the thing.
Go ahead.
Cool. So I think that if there is a change and if there is an idea of what utopia looks like, heaven, the ideal society, forgiveness is one of, if not the major highway that we must travel across in order to get there. And
yeah, I think I agree.
From the Christian perspective, why are you motivated to forgive and like trying to perhaps imperfectly understand why the brother would even be able to get to that place? Or what I might even be arguing is that he actually didn't have to get there, but this was just who he was. There's a story, and forgive me for quoting Jesus, but I'm a Christian and it's a thing that I do. Jesus talks about this guy who came to the king and he owed him millions of dollars, like just an unpayable amount of money, just ridiculous amounts of money. And the king basically says, oh, you're going to go to prison. The result is that your family are going to have to work as indentured servants for the rest of their life in order to pay off this debt. And so the guy just simply pleads for mercy, pleads for forgiveness. And the king says, okay, cool. I'll forgive you. Don't even worry about the debt. And then the guy leaves the courthouse. He goes down the street and he finds this dude who owes him $10. Puts his hands around this guy's neck and just starts throttling him because he's like, give me my $10. Well, it turns out the king's servants witnessed this taking place. Like, hold on, isn't that the guy that just got forgiven millions of dollars? And he's like, he's wringing this guy's neck for $10. So they go back to the king and they tell him what happened. And the king is just like, how could you do that? He says, you evil servant, and I'm reading from the text, it's in Matthew 18. I forgave you that tremendous debt because you pleaded with me. Shouldn't you have mercy on your fellow servant just as I had mercy on you? And so from the Christian perspective, are we motivated to forgive others? Well, it's simply because we understand the forgiveness that we have received. And here's what forgiveness means. Forgiveness isn't just simply waving a magic wand and the offense goes away. The king who was owed millions of dollars didn't, like, after forgiving him, have that money back. So what forgiveness means is I receive the offense on my own account. So he absorbs the loss himself for the other person's behalf. And so when it comes to something like this, it's being willing to absorb the offense and treat that person differently. And so that's my motivation for it. I think that when I have understood what God has done for me under my belief system, then it's actually not hard to do that for other people. It actually becomes the natural impulse and a joy.
So I would like to disagree with you a little bit, specifically on the example that you used.
Sure, please do.
Because the comment that I wanted to highlight, by the way, Naka, we're probably going to have to go at least 15 minutes over what you had originally planned in order to cover the judge, because we're about 10 minutes off from closing down if we go with just an hour.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
So, and I want to give enough time for us to address that because this is an atheist channel and there are folks waiting for us to go after that. But their messenger reveals, who, it's weird to highlight one of his comments, but he does make a good point here. He says there are a couple of definitions for forgiveness. One is to pardon one's behaviors or actions, which is what the king does here in the case of the debt. The other is to let go of bitterness or resentment for what one has done to you or a loved one. I actually think your example with the king is the former, which I disagree with, but the example with the gentleman that we've been talking about all night is actually the latter, which I think is psychologically healthy and actually quite important for, for like human functioning, right? I talked earlier about like grudges and things being poison that you swallow that you expect to kill the person you're pissed at.
Yeah.
So I think that there is a distinct difference between those two types of forgiveness. And I think the story with the king sort of illustrates how the like former type of forgiveness can backfire, whereas the latter type of forgiveness, the kind where you personally let go of your resentment, is much healthier. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that thought. I find it hard to agree that there are two different versions of forgiveness. I think that forgiveness proper entails both. It's not only an absorbing of the offense, because in the example of the story that we're talking about, not the Bible story, but the story of the cop who kills, the brother is absorbing the offense in the sense that his brother's still gone, like, and so that's the offense that's being absorbed.
But he's not pardoning the behavior or actions. Like, he's just specifically saying that he's letting go of his anger over it. There's a distinct difference there, I think.
When you use the word pardon, what do you believe the word pardon to mean?
Pardoning means that you are absolving that person of responsibility for their behavior or actions, which is what the king does in your parable.
I don't see it that way. Oh, good.
Well, in the case of the debt, absolving the person of their debt, they are no longer going to receive punishment, neither is their family, for what that person did wrong, which was rack up that massive amount of debt and not pay it back.
Yes, so you
versus this woman is still going to face punishment.
You said something that was really, really interesting, as far as you don't think that the former one, the idea of absolving someone from the for absolving them of their debt, is a healthy model. Here's why I think it's a healthy model. If it's properly understood in its right context, because the guy, like any sane person who's been forgiven millions of dollars, is not going to go and start choking someone who owes them $10. That's just not the natural response when you realize the debt that you've been forgiven from. The natural response is actually to be released from the guilt and shame that you have from accumulating that debt, and then to actually go and pay that forward. Like, the natural impulse of being forgiven millions and millions and millions of dollars is to call up all of your friends, families, your coworkers, whoever owed you $5, $10, $100, and be like, hey, don't worry. And so the result actually is reconciliation. The result is, if you realize that this is what you have received, you treat people differently. And on the Christian story, this is how it carries forward, is that if every believer could receive that forgiveness for themselves and truly understand it for themselves, the way they treat the world around them is dramatically different. And so I see a world in which the majority of people embrace this model of forgiveness for themselves and then for others, actually being the, like I said, the vehicle, the highway by which we arrive to utopia.
Yeah, Aaron Benton is usually fairly decent sometimes. He brings up a point. Says, we have our forgiveness in Jesus Christ. Well, the believers of God's Son. So I think that this conception that forgiveness comes from God, I'm sure that you probably think along those lines. That's one thing that I would have to fight back against, Aaron. As I said, like, I'm not sure if I could forgive somebody in this situation of somebody killing my brother. I've never been in that situation. I don't know how I would react. I think my natural reaction would not to be very forgiving, at least at first. Maybe with time, totally. But I am still a very forgiving person, naturally. If I could be so angry at you today and then tomorrow I'm going to forgive everything and be your best friend again. I've literally done this my entire life. I think it's natural that people can forgive. I think that some ideologies can promote a better foundation for forgiving. I think that certain atheists, we have a foundation to where we've overcome a lot of things. We understand that this life is what we have, and we can forgive quite freely. So
Yeah.
I don't think it's necessarily just because you believe in Jesus means that you have this ability to forgive, Aaron, when I'm clearly an example against that. And so with Ali, I know Ali has the ability to forgive as well.
Yeah. And I personally am not making that accusation that only Christian or only religious people can forgive. I've seen you live it out, and I think it's amazing and it's admirable, and it's like it affirms what I already know about you to be true, Naka, that you are a man of integrity, that you are a good guy, someone that I'm proud to consider a friend. And so in so much that I see that, like, I'm just like, yeah, that's awesome. That's so cool. I would, and that's why I said earlier, even if you weren't able to get to the point where you forgive your brother's killer, I don't hold you. I don't look at you less because of that. I don't look at anyone because, like, yeah, that's a really tough thing. For me, it's under the framework of, if you never got forgiven $1 million, is forgiving someone $10,000 a difficult thing? Heck yeah, it's 10 G's. Like, who doesn't need 10 G's on a normal day, right? Like, so I don't like discount anyone from that. Like, hey, if someone has the opportunity to pay up on a debt that they owe, like I'm going to take that on any normal day. But it's within the context of being forgiven the equivalent of millions or billions of dollars, that 10K, 100K is like not even a problem.
Yeah. And I do agree with you. Like, I do think that forgiveness, if you want to be a good person, this is one of the things that you have to have. If you can't forgive, then you should just give up on the pretense that you're a good person, like
totally.
Without that trait inside of you, and trust me, some human beings don't have this trait. I know a few of them in my real life, and they're douchebags.
I have a few of those in my life as well.
Yeah, I mean, some people they have no empathy, they have no compassion. It's them and nothing else.
Hey, so Ash, real quick, Ashley's saying we're brushing up on our rules and cool it. What's the rule that we're pushing up against?
Oh, I wasn't talking to you. I was talking about a couple of the folks in the chat that were like brushing up on proselytizing. Like, I was just like, you guys are, it's fine. This is the context of the discussion, but like, careful.
Okay, cool. I just want to make sure that I'm not.
No, I would not. If I was going to step in as a mod, I do it like on voice with you guys. I don't tend to passive aggressively put shit in chat.
Cool. No worries.
Messenger's an old friend of the channel, and he gets a little carried away with some of his messages.
It wasn't Messenger I was addressing there either. It was a TOG.
Oh, this one guy, be nice. Come on. All right, so Ashley, let's get into the judge.
Okay, so I kind of have an issue with the judge, like, her personal Bible or not, like, strong Christian convictions or not. You are the operating arm of the state currently in your position, coming up to someone after they just got a really lenient sentence and hugging them and telling them, reconsider your actions and maybe look into Jesus from the bench, so to speak, is a problem. It's a violation of a separation of church and state. Like, even as a Hellenist, if I were a judge sitting on a freaking bench, like, I would not be like, maybe you should go talk to, Zedeus about your crimes here and reconsider. Like, that's just
and if you were, there's a very good possibility you could probably lose your seat.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you on this point, and maybe that's a surprise. But yeah, like, out of the entire story, that's my least favorite. Well, other than the fact that someone got murdered in cold blood, like, other than that, this is one of the parts of the stories that I really, really dislike. I think that the judge grossly overstepped her boundaries, and I wouldn't even be opposed to there being some type of consequence as far as that's concerned. I wouldn't want anyone to lose their job. I just try and put myself in that room. The emotions are running high. I just witnessed the brother do this amazing, like, miraculous act of forgiveness, and I want to be a part of it. My heart goes out to this person, or whatever the case is. Like, so I wouldn't want them to lose their job, but there absolutely needs to be a recognition that, hold on, you overstepped your boundaries. Like there's a reason why the church and state are separate when it comes to these things, because this is the exact thing that we want to avoid. And I saw something in the chat, like imagine if she, like the brother gives his Bible and then she comes out and brings her satanic Bible. Like, whoa, like that would be such a matter of controversy, and rightly so, because it's still a transgression of that separation that I think is such an important part of the judicial system. And so why is there a double standard when it comes to the Christian God? I would love for that not to be the case. I would love for there to be some type of consequence involved. And I would love moving forward that is not a precedent that I'm interested in seeing more of.
Yeah, I don't necessarily, I don't think she should lose her job, but maybe be reprimanded, or maybe be told, hey, don't do this again, or you're
suspended briefly or something.
Yeah.
I'm all for that.
Yeah, and this was the part of the story that really stood out. I was like, oh, we got an issue. Me and Allie both was like, yeah, we got an issue with this part of the story. I had a slight issue just overall what I see with what I would call just a forgiveness trait in the Black community, and I think that there are some issues going way back into history regarding that. But as I said, that was a long time ago, and it would just be residual effects, not any like conscious thought. Like, oh, there's no conscious thought to it. It's something that's ingrained, and it's something that I see in the Black community is this ability to forgive really atrocious behavior, to where I don't see that so much in my community of white folks. And I'm not being racist by any means. I'm just calling it like I see it. But this part of the story really stood out. Like, ooh, the judge should have known better than to go there. Now, like the judge could have done that easily in private. Could have brought the prisoner to her chambers, said, look, that moment really moved me. Here's your Bible. I
don't think I would have objected if it came out that in a private moment, this is what has happened. Cool. I mean, you're a person, you're still a human being. You still have your own right to personal interactions, but the fact that it was something that was done from like the public,
from her seat of power, that's
really dislike
the
that
issue. And it does beg the question: would that judge have been so understanding, or would the brother have been so understanding if throughout the course of the trial she had been an outspoken atheist, and it maybe a couple moments had been mocking towards God? Would that same element of forgiveness have come?
I don't know that the judge would feel that way, nor do I know that the jury would feel that way. I think that would have definitely swayed the sentencing. But if I'm putting myself in the place of the brother, like what's the greater sin if we're measuring it? Murder of your brother or the fact that you're rude in court? Like clearly one outweighs in a massive degree the other one.
I think that would
my opinion is that he would have still extended the forgiveness.
See, and I thought you would answer that way, because I think that you tend to hang out with the Christians that are more like you and not douchebaggery. So in my opinion, Matt, maybe even Aaron in the chat, definitely sky out and probably praise, would definitely probably consider atheism one of the greatest sins, probably greater than murder. The fact that you're denying God's existence, you're denying God's love. To them, that's like, I have a shirt, my one Raging Atheist shirt, which you can buy in my merch store.
Hey,
100% reprobate, and that's because.
How funny would it be if I purchased one and wore one for a photo one day?
Oh, dude, I would sport that picture everywhere. I got one of Dr. Josh.
Only if I get you wearing one of my That Christian Vlogger shirts, then.
Oh yeah. Oh, this is gonna happen. So
that would be fun.
But yeah, so but that reprobate term, that's something that very, very fundamental Christians labeled me from the very, very beginning. It's something that I embraced with the help of Dr. Josh and his lovely wife, who was like, "Yeah, we're making this T-shirt."
Oh, Tony Design says, Justin, for Halloween, that's what I got to wear.
So apparently, Justin is going to dress up as an atheist for Halloween. I'm going to dress up
as the Raging Atheist for Halloween. Yeah. And then you got to go door to door and give out Bible tracts.
Yeah. I'm going to film myself doing it.
Oh, I would so watch that in a heartbeat.
Oh, that's Yeah, I think we're gonna have to make that happen just for you guys in the chat.
So, for what it's worth, I think that it's doubly. I mean, I want to go back a little bit, Justin, to what you were saying. Forgive me for my thoughts being scattered. As anybody who's watched the show long enough to see late streams knows, my meds kicked out about an hour and a half ago, so my brain doesn't function the way that most people's brains do. I've got ADHD, and keeping track of things is difficult once my meds kick out.
No, I get it. I'm just glad you're here.
But you mentioned earlier, like the heat of the moment and emotions and all that, and I just wanted to kind of hammer down a little bit that I don't think that that's necessarily an excuse, and I don't think you were presenting it as one, but I wanted to, like, for anybody in the chat who might have been confused.
I'm not presenting it as an excuse at all. No,
yeah,
I'm just
that's
saying
why
that
I said
I would
don't
understand.
think you are.
I'm just saying that I would understand in that moment. I could see myself in the heat of that, caught up with the emotions, making a similar mistake. And so because I see myself in that situation, I would want grace for myself. I want grace for her. Like, hey, maybe don't lose your job, but there's still some kind of like, no, this is not the way that we're moving forward.
And honestly, none of us, until you're in a situation, knows how you're going to react in that situation. So, like, I've never been one to be like, we should crucify this person for one mistake, even if it's a Christian making a Christian mistake, or some mistakes. Like,
hey, if it's the 10th time she does it, with multiple cases that are in this similar vein, then you lose your job. I'm sorry. It's an established pattern with no like indicator of change.
Yeah.
No.
When I'm saying mistake, I'm obviously not meaning like serious crime. Like, a mistake sitting on the judge, being caught up in the moment, seeing this compassionate moment of this brother forgiving, and then you're a Christian, and she probably thought she was doing the Christian thing. So she didn't have this mindset of, oh, I'm going to take advantage of my position here. Probably wasn't thinking of the optics of how it was going to play out in the public and all of that, because I mean, of this story, she's probably gotten the most heat for that action of anybody.
Oh, I'm sure.
So yeah, like, I don't think that she was like intentionally doing something wrong. So, and I don't think that should require like some major punishment. And I do think that at this point now, she probably realizes I made a big mistake, but But I get what you're saying, and I understood it, and I'm glad that you had a chance to clarify it in case somebody in the chat didn't, because I think that when I was a Christian, I would have been caught up in the same way in that moment, probably, and I would have probably wanted to have been right there giving her a hug too, like, or even in an atheist scenario, like say you're an atheist judge, and this I don't know, this atheist was accused of these crimes, and it's hard to explain, but like, I can see being caught up in a moment, having emotion overcome you. These are very human moments. These are what happens to us humans. So I don't really blame her for that. But I do think as a judge, she should have probably known better and seen the optics and understood that this could actually harm my career, and especially in the climate we have now with a fake Christian president. I mean, I don't think that there's much controversy in saying that. Pretty much trying to pander to a fundamental base by pushing some rather fundamental ideas. So with that, in that climate, I think that it was a huge grievance for her to do so. I think that if this would have happened under Obama or any other president for that matter, it might not have been such a big deal, but just to me, it just hit this place of where this country is right now. Like right now, this country has to decide between moderation and extremism. And right now, it seems like a lot of people are choosing extremism, and it kind of plays to that feeling of extremism that I get in the country.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I know we're a little late, so.
Well, and on the subject of that, apparently, there is an atheist group that actually filed a complaint for that, and the judge defended herself by stating that the trial had already concluded, so therefore she was at liberty to do whatever she wanted, which I severely disagree with.
Interesting.
Yeah, I
do you think that the judge should never be able to, or what's the proper time and place for the judge, if any, to be able to insert her personal views.
If she were to say either visit the person in prison or when she was off duty or something, then maybe, but from the bench or from any sort of position of power, again, you're still an arm of the state. That's effectively the state professing those views as far as that's concerned.
Okay, what I'm hearing her saying, though, is what you said. One of the conditions was if she was off duty. And according to what she's saying, not that I necessarily agree with this or not, but what she's saying is that she was off duty when she said that.
Yeah, I think I would have to disagree with her assessment because it was right there in the courtroom. So like you're getting paid for that moment.
Yeah, she said that it was what she did was appropriate because the trial had ended. She told the Associated Press, "I came down to extend my condolences to the Jean family and to encourage Miss Guyger because she had a lot of life to live. She asked me if I thought that God could forgive her, and I said, yes, God can forgive you and has. If she wanted to start with the Bible, I didn't want her to go back to the jail and sink into doubt and self-pity and become bitter because she still has a lot of life about her and is following the sentence. I would hope that she could live it purposefully."
Okay, so for me, I think the context changes a little bit. I still think that overall it looks really, really bad. But within the context of her perception is that the trial is done, and in direct response to this person's question, she gives the answer. To me, that shifts things a little bit.
Not so much for me. Because this sounds more like I would have much preferred if she came out and said, "Hey, I made a lapse of judgment. Maybe I should have done it from that position." I think this sounds more like an excuse to justify a wrongdoing. So to me, it actually makes her look a little more guilty, in my opinion, because in that situation, for one, you've got the Gideons going to prison all the time. You're not going to go into any jailhouse, any prison in this country and not have 98% of the population as being religious, Bibles everywhere. There's going to be 25 people in prison that's going to come up to you immediately and talk to you about Jesus. It's going to happen. She didn't have to be the one to do that. She could have actually easily used her position to get a priest to go talk to her if she felt like maybe she really needed that.
What if she did this? What if in response to the question, she said everything she said, but the only thing that changed is she didn't hand her a Bible? Is that fair game? Because she's like actually asked a question.
So yeah, I think if
from what it sounds, she's no longer up. She's no longer at the I forget what they call it, where she sits.
The bench.
The bench. Yeah, she's no longer on the bench because according to what I heard you say, she came down to embrace both the victim's family and the murderer.
I think giving of the Bible is probably the thing I didn't like the most.
Yeah. So sorry, Tony's asking the question. The question I'm asking is it any different if she still said everything she said in response to the question, but just did not give her a Bible?
Yeah, I still would have an issue with it, but I probably wouldn't have as big an issue with it. And
because the alternative is to say, you know what, she asked the question, could God forgive me, or whatever the question was, and she would say, I'm sorry, I'm not at liberty to discuss my personal views at this moment.
I think in that situation, the Bible is the thing that I dislike the most. And,
I agree.
And I think that if somebody asks you a question, then you actually have license to answer. And I don't think that there is an actual separation of church and state in this country. Unfortunately, God gets brought into the courtroom all the time. They swear their oaths on the Bible. So
yeah, that's an interesting thing. Yeah, so clearly the Bible is somewhat fair game in a court if they're swearing on the Bible, which I don't really like either.
Well, yeah, neither do I. I think it speaks to just the way our
But if under that value, under that idea, if there's consistency there, that they're like literally swearing in on the Bible is bringing a Bible under that paradigm any more egregious than swearing on a Bible? Or are they of equal transgression value? Neither should have any place because they're both a transgression of this value of separation of church and state.
Yeah,
either none or both are okay.
I think swearing on a Bible is pretty archaic in a secular society. I would much rather like swear on the Constitution or on just swear. I don't. for me personally, I can lie just as easily swearing on the Bible as swearing to myself.
You know,
I mean,
as a Christian, I think it would be just as easy if you were inclined to lie.
yeah. So I mean, for a Christian, if a Christian, Matt Powell would have no trouble lying, swearing on that.
Well, and here's the problem is I've now read 4 different articles on what happened, and it seems like she gave different accounts of what she was asked and what was told to her in every single different interview. So, like, I'm not really sure what happened, but in one of the interviews, she claimed that she was asked for a Bible, and in another one, she claimed that she was asked if God could forgive her. And then in another one, she claimed that she was asked, "Can my life still have a purpose?" And they're all differing, like they're all from different press sites. So I'm not really sure if there's truth to that.
It does seem to me like she's kind of trying to rationalize her action because she realized the action was wrong. And which is very easy to, like, if you are caught up in the moment, people do things that they wouldn't usually do all the time. Like, we've never heard of this judge doing this before, right? And maybe it's happened before, and this case just happens to be on the national news. Who knows? I've never personally heard of this judge doing this before. It could just be a lapse in judgment. She realizes it's the lapse in judgment. Now she's making excuses. I'm not even saying that those excuses are wrong. Maybe she honestly thinks that's the way it happened. Maybe it really did happen one of those ways. Like I said, I think for me, just swearing on the Bible itself, because it doesn't actually have to be a Bible. It can be a Quran. It can be a Bhagavad Gita. It could be whatever book you actually choose, I believe. But most people are Christians and most people choose the Bible. I think a Republican famously thought that a Bible was required here recently.
Oh yeah, I do remember hearing about that.
Yeah, and he was thoroughly schooled. So there is a little bit of a difference there from having your choice of swearing an oath on the Bible of your faith and having somebody else give you a book of theirs. You see what I'm saying? So I think that there is a bit of a difference, but I think that your question is very valid. Had she not given the Bible and just been responding to a heartfelt question from somebody she just convicted to 10 years in prison, just took 10 years of their life away, I think I would actually have a problem with her not answering the question.
Right.
Well, I don't think it's the answer to the question that I take issue with, though. It's the hug. Like, the hug and the Bible together are the problem, too.
Which the hug, I think, I hugged the judge that sentenced me to prison.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So, I mean, I can kind of see that because I think that's human. I don't think all judges are dispassionate people. I think sometimes, like, it probably hurts them to send people to prison.
Yeah, if anything, if a judge is moved by compassion and responds in the world around them, that's.
But I do think the combination
is off-putting. Oh, yeah. I wouldn't even say that the combination is off-putting. The giving of the Bible in any circumstance, in my opinion, is off-putting.
In that situation.
Even if explicitly asked for a Bible, like you had properly said, there are a million other ways for this person to receive a Bible. A million other people who would happily give them a Bible.
Or even her personal Bible, like, could have been brought to her by her family very easily. No prison's going to deny a person their holy book.
Yeah.
So I think it's getting down to the narrow of it. For me, I'm not going to speak for Allie. But for me, I think it is the act of giving the Bible that I had an issue with. So if you take that act out of it, I don't really have an issue with responding to a question. But
yeah,
even then, like, in the courtroom, I kind of do. But I wouldn't have a problem with it had, like, say, immediately after, in private chambers, or I don't know. That's a little bit harder to answer whether or not. So I think mainly for me, it's the giving of the Bible in the courtroom. And I think outside of her giving of the Bible came before the sentencing, to where it could actually influence the vote of the jury, I would have a big problem with it.
Yeah. Well, I'll put it to you this way. Here's where my boundaries would lie. And these are actually based off of the way that I got out of punishment from my job for going to a protest. Basically, the way that things worked at my job was if you were not in uniform, when you get in trouble with the law in some way, so long as it doesn't cause you to, get in trouble so long as it doesn't cause you to miss work, Basically, they can't do anything about it. But if you were in uniform, you're considered to be representing the company, or in this case, the country. So therefore, that action carries with it the representation of, the country.
Right.
So to
Are
speak.
you at liberty to say what your work is and what the protest was? I'm just curious for context.
So my work at the time, I worked in the deli for Fred Meyer, for Kroger, and the protest was the Occupy Seattle protests. So we got tear gassed and a whole bunch of us got arrested, and there was a big mess for it. Okay. We didn't start it. I actually saw the cop slug somebody that started it, but that's not how the media spun it. We actually got recordings of it too. We were live streaming, and I was there as our quote unquote native journalists. Like, there were a number of us that had laptops and webcams and things that we recorded on and live streamed because we were worried about that sort of thing, because it had happened at the Occupy New York stuff. But the too long didn't read version of that was basically, if you were in uniform, you could be liable for punishment if you did things that were uncouth. But if you're not, then you're fine. And so I think the appropriate time where she could have done that would be in plain clothes outside of her duties as judge, personally. And if she felt so moved, she could have done that then, and it would have been perfectly fine, because she wouldn't have been, representing the court in that moment. And I think that that's a fair place to put it.
Yeah. In your circumstance, you were protesting without the uniform, and they tried to pin that on you as it was a problem, and you're saying, no, I wasn't in uniform. Is that what the situation was?
Correct. The actual official employee policy was, if you're in uniform, then you can be held responsible for those sorts of things, and if you're not, you're not. And my manager tried to get me in trouble because I ended up, my face was on the news briefly. And so, my manager tried to go after me for it, and, both the union and the other managers were like, but wait, this, in the employee handbook, it says that if you're not in uniform, you can't be held responsible for that because you're on your own time. You're not representing the company.
Yeah. I wonder if there is a similar policy in whatever handbook that judges have.
I'm going to have to go back and just look at the live chat tomorrow just to see what shit fires Messenger reveals stirred up in the chat. That's
Messenger's actually been on his best behavior.
I've always enjoyed Messenger in chat. He's really brutal.
Messenger has been on his best behavior all night. I haven't actually seen him start anything, really.
Yeah, I think Messenger's been pretty good tonight.
I think he heeded your warning. Because you're like, hold on, about to cross the line, back up, and he's like, my bad.
Well, the funny thing is again, the warning was for this one guy. It wasn't even for him. But no, Messenger has actually not been a problem all night. So I'm gonna, maybe regret defending him, but he's been fine all night. Most of the stuff that I've seen him post has been fine.
You've done a good job. Don't screw it up.
Messenger's brutal in live chat. So I want to see what little shitstorms he stirred up. But no, this has been a great conversation. Thank you, Justin, for wanting to talk to me about this. I think that the ultimate thing that I would like for atheists to take away from this is that don't judge people for actions of kindness. I've seen a little bit of in the chat, and I'm not calling anybody out. When we see these actions of kindness, we shouldn't rebel against them. We should actually embrace them. We shouldn't, just because it's a Christian doing it, try to find fault with it. Because, ultimately, as I think, Justin pointed out very correctly, this is a trait in people that we should glorify. The ability to forgive other human beings, I think, is one of the most important traits that you can have, especially in a country that is so divided like we are. If we're ever going to come together, it's going to require forgiveness on both parts. We're going to have to forgive them Republicans for a lot of shit, and they're going to have to forgive us for our liberalism because they hate our liberalism, right? So, but that's what
he says, sitting next to a lefty.
Yeah. But what I want people to take away from this conversation is not, what I brought up about, religion being forced onto slavery and the ramifications of that. What I brought up about the judge. what I want you to take away from this is that a human being was able to forgive one of the most egregious crimes that could be committed against you. And that is the murder of a very close loved one. That takes a certain bit of humanity, I think. And I think it should be applauded. This young man is getting attacked, not just from atheists, but from Christians, from a lot of people that don't agree with what he did. And whether you agree with it or not, whether you can put yourself in that place or not, take it for what it is. A great act of kindness that many of us couldn't do ourselves. And that should be what we mainly take away from the story, I think.
Well, and I think that it's like that doesn't necessarily mean we can't have a conversation about race relations and about police brutality and other things off the back of that. Just don't specifically attack this person for their personal decision as a part of that. Like, you can talk about it like in reference to it, like, hey, I disagree with it, but don't call the person, like, don't ad hominem, don't call the person stupid, don't attack them. Like, you know, this is something that, I mean, I would hope that I would be able to get to that point, but certainly not in the courtroom while the conviction's being handed down, right? Like, this is a personal thing that you do to heal yourself more than anything else. I think it would take me
several years probably to get to that point. Like, if I could ever even get to it before I died, you know, like, I would think about it every single day for years. And then maybe I could get to that point of forgiving them for taking away a brother that we fight a lot.
Well, and so I think
real quick, my wife is walking by. I wanted her to be able to say hi to you, Knock.
Okay.
Who's this?
Hey.
Hi.
Hey, what's up?
Hello.
Right there.
Oh, hi.
There you are. What's up?
What's up? Nothing much. Just getting ready for bed.
Everyone in the chat, you've never met her, but this is my wife, Emily, and we got to hang out with Knock.
A
couple months ago.
Yeah, a couple months ago now.
Yeah, it was so fun.
Yeah, my daughter still asks about you.
Oh, how sweet.
How's Ronnie doing?
She's really good. Sleeping right now.
Okay,
she's the cutest.
She's so
cute. Thank you.
Yeah. It was good to see you.
Yeah, very good to see you again. You might be getting to meet Allie soon. Will your wife be with you if that happens?
Getting to meet what?
He's asking you if you're...
Yeah, I can't hear all of it.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
I can only hear part of it.
Here.
Sorry, what was that?
Will she be with you when you go to Portland?
Or when he's going up. He's coming up here.
I'm going up to Seattle. I'm in Portland. I'm going up to Seattle next week, and she will not.
For some reason, I always think that you're in California. I don't know why.
Because you're tired.
I'm from California.
Yeah, because you're from California, and your phone number is.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Yeah, that's awesome. Nice to see you again. I had really good fun with you guys when you were here. I'm so glad that you were able to come hang out with me tonight.
It was such a blast, and
so
we'd love to have you out this way at some point.
Yeah, it's gonna happen. I'm planning on it sometime this year. I'm gonna go see Allie. So yeah, I'll be out there.
Super cool.
Awesome. Good to see you again.
Yep, nice to see you again too.
Yeah, take care.
Yeah, you too.
Bye.
Yep. Real quick before we end this out, any news on the new channel, or when are you going to start making videos on your channel?
Man, this is the bane of my existence. I'm trying to figure out how do I articulate, and maybe, I don't know, if you have any input on this, I'd be open to the input. And how cool would it be if you, the raging atheist, was the answer to my questions? I would love that. I'm having difficulty articulating what is the thing. Like, how can I, through my, like, what the real problem is, what do I call the name of this show? So the best idea that I have to date, and it's taken me 3 months to come up with this, I'm not happy with it yet, but it's taboo spirituality. And you know the heart of what I'm going after. It's no longer creating just Christian content for Christians. There's a million of those out there now. I'm not interested in participating in that anymore. I've done like 600 videos like that. Kind of getting bored of it. What I want to do is more of this. How do I have conversations with people who see the world differently? I want a show where differences matter, disagreement is encouraged, and you don't have to yell to make a point. That's what I'm looking for. The problem with taboo spirituality is that when I think of the way that would feel, and like the emotion and the impact of this type of a show, it's more conspiracy based, it's more heavy, it's more disagreement, it's more dark than it is light and positive and bridge building and bringing people together and building relationship. And so it doesn't quite carry the tone of what I'm wanting to get. So the idea is still taboo spirituality, talking to people whose views aren't represented by the media. Like I want to talk to Ali about Hellenism for sure. I want to talk to Ocean about what does it mean to be a pantheist. I want to talk to you more about atheism. I want to talk to different
Ocean's
people.
a heathen.
Sorry. What did I say?
You called him a pantheist. Ocean is a heathen. He specifically worships the Norse gods.
Oh, I thought he was a okay, even better. Cool. I mean, I want to talk about those kinds of things. And excuse me, Ocean, if you ever watch this in the playback for mislabeling you. But that's what I want to do. And I want to do it from the same tone in which we have these conversations where we can disagree about things, which actually we didn't do too much today. So on a future episode, Knock, we got to find something where we disagree.
Yeah, I actually thought we would. Like before you showed up, I'm like, I think he thinks that this is going to be just like all agreement on this one little thing of the trial, and I'm talking about this and this and this.
Yeah, we'll find a controversy somewhere. But then I'm finding that we're more.
I think we ended up agreeing anyways.
Let's find something that we vehemently disagree on, because I think that'll be a fun conversation. But yeah, so that's what I'm looking to do. Abortion. Oh, we could. You know what? One of the conversations I have already shot for this show that I can't figure out the name for is actually on abortion. But I find it more interesting that this conversation. This is the 1 out of 6 shows that I've shot already. She's the only one that I'm talking to that is a fellow Christian. She's actually a friend of mine. Goes to my same church at home. The difference is that she's pro-choice, having gone through an abortion in her past, still is pro-choice. I'm not. And so we have a disagreement on all of that. And I think it'll be interesting to have 2 Christians disagree on it rather than a Christian and a non-Christian, because that's kind of the narrative as it is already.
Yeah,
well, for what it's worth, by the way, I've had to have an abortion in my past too. So like the being pro-choice thing, I would have died if I had not.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what I told my friend. I'm sorry that you were ever in a position that you had to make that decision. And I'll also say this, actually having had that conversation with her, I'm far more sympathetic and empathetic towards people who have been in said position. So I withhold any judgment.
So
yeah, we had that conversation briefly when you were here, and quickly saw that, I'm definitely pro-choice and you're not, but I don't think that you're definitely not Jill with your pro-choiceness. You don't know who Jill is, but Jill he will literally come in here and liberals are the cause of abortion. Like it's all
liberalism is destroying Christianity. He made a 3-hour-long hate piece on us.
Yeah. So I mean, but you don't know that these atrocious Christians, and you're so much better for it too.
The Messenger Reveals says something: pro-choice for a Christian falls under cognitive dissonance. And you know what? Like I get why you would say that, but that's just an ignorant statement, and I mean ignorant not in a pejorative sense. I mean it for what it means. It's just an uninformed position. There are actually good reasons why a person of faith, and specifically a Christian, might be inclined to be pro-choice. And I understand that's a really hard thing to hear. But if you talk to someone about it, you actually could learn about it. And that's what challenged me. Because in this conversation, like we still get to the point in where like, no, I'm saying that all life matters, that life begins at the moment of conception. And with all these things, like, wow, like I see what you see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it was really, it was a humbling place to be.
The majority of the left in this country are Christians. I mean, the majority of people in this country are Christians. So the majority of the people that are actually pro-choice are Christian. You just don't hear about them because the Right for Life crowd is so loud. I mean, and I'm not saying, like the pro-life crowd. I'm saying the specific group, Right for Life, is a very loud, very wealthy lobby that lobbies directly to our Congress. So actually, you hear that side of the argument, but there are plenty of Christians that are pro-choice. They're in the Democratic Party, littered throughout the Democratic Party.
Yeah, so I have many other friends who are pro-choice, but I've never actually had the thorough conversation of why and what does this mean and how do you reconcile this with what you claim to believe as far as faith is concerned.
So, Knock, I actually do have a really good idea for a joint stream with you guys, and it's based on some of the questions I told you I actually wanted to ask. At the beginning when we were discussing, when we first had you on, Justin, you and I talked a little bit about like the ability for business owners and such to discriminate based off of their faith. People like, say, refusing to, perform abortions, but also other examples that you and I talked about. Oops, we lost Knock. I'm not sure what happened.
Oh,
I was trying to turn off my camera so I could smoke.
Oh, is he not wanting to smoke on stream?
Yeah, he doesn't like smoking on stream.
And I'm trying to get my mind to a point of not smoking. But yeah, I don't like smoking.
Is it because you don't want to be an influence on the youths?
That and it's all the comments of why is he smoking on camera? You need to stop smoking. You need it's a little bit of both. But there is definitely that thought that if I do have some younger viewers, and if they're seeing me smoke, I don't want to influence them into making the worst decision of their life.
Yeah, so drugs are bad. Don't do drugs. Don't do smoking or that kind of stuff. I'm actually having an extended conversation with another person who's part of this journey on this new show, who we did an episode on pot. And most recently, he's trying to give up nicotine, and his whole life is trending more towards sobriety just because he's tired of being addicted.
Yeah, me too.
But for what it's worth, like, I think that the discussion about that particular topic, the idea of like religion. Well, I mean, I use the term discrimination. Like, you used a different term. You talked about religious rights and the right for a religious person. Like, we talked about the whole, like, making a cake for a gay couple or stuff like that. Mm-hmm. I think that having that discussion between the two of you, if you're still in the same position you were the last time we talked about it, I think that that would be both a political and religious discussion that you guys would both get a lot out of.
I would love to have that conversation. You would actually have to remind me as to what the position was that I articulated, because I haven't spent a moment thinking about it since then. But I would still be happy to have that conversation.
The position you articulated that you said I might have shifted a little bit with one of my stories that I told you about having a unfortunate bit of personal violence done against me and having to jump from pharmacy to pharmacy to get Plan B because a number of pharmacists asserted their religious rights not to give me Plan B. Wow. You talked about how, like, religious people should have a right to refuse service to folks or to refuse to perform things that are against their religious convictions as a part of their job.
Yeah, that could be a good conversation where we have a little bit of contention. Or a conversation about sin. I did promise you we'd talk about sin one of these days. So we could have several conversations. I think the one that Allie brings up, I think we talked about it a little bit, and I think we definitely have disagreements, but I also think that we'd have some agreements. I think I'd probably surprise Allie a little bit. Maybe like I surprised a lot of atheists with my stance on the mountain in Hawaii. I believe that, like, you shouldn't encroach on tradition or culture or religious beliefs for the sake of science. I think that in this particular mountain, we're putting telescopes there that we could probably put elsewhere and not destroy habitat and culture. So I think that we would have disagreement, but I think that I would also have common ground with you in that argument. I think where we really have disagreement is when it came to sin. But so, I called that out when you was here.
Cool.
Yeah, honestly, like, given what you're talking about just having conversations and finding common ground, I wonder if hallowed ground or something like that would be an interesting name for a channel like that.
I always write down all ideas because it's definitely something we're thinking about and brainstorming. So here's my hope with it. And I know that this is a tall ask and probably a practical impossibility, at least early on. But when I envision the type of audience that I would love to cultivate, it's not an explicitly Christian audience. I would love, if it were possible, to have 50% of my audience some kind of Christian persuasion, and the other 50, the other, whatever that, it could be pagan, it could be atheist, it could be Muslim, it could be Jewish, it could be whatever the case is. I would love a diverse group of people engaging in the conversations. So I'm trying hard to both communicate that, there are topics of spirituality, like taboo spirituality, for example, is the reason why, but also not unnecessarily being off-putting to someone who's open to the conversation, but really averse to Christianese or Christian language. And I don't know. And because you're suggesting it, maybe hallowed ground doesn't turn someone off.
Well, hallowed ground is just a place that is spiritually sacred. Like, I know that Christians often refer to it as a place that has been blessed by a priest, or frequently like graveyards and stuff, but it's traditionally been used to mean any space that is considered to be sacred. And so when you're talking about hallowed ground, you are not to commit crimes on hallowed ground. There's no punishment that can be enacted on hallowed ground. It's a safe place.
Ooh, I like that.
It's considered to be protected by the gods or God.
Yeah, I as an atheist, it wouldn't offend me. Like, I don't get offended too easily by much.
I don't doubt that, but I feel like there's a possibility to get many more who are maybe not so open-minded as you involved in this type of a community. I think that there would be value there.
Oh yeah. Trust me, there's a whole slew of atheists. That's one of the arguments that we get into with Christians, because Christians tend to think that atheists are all the same, and atheists, we're a melting pot of any. Some Christians like to call atheism a worldview, but it's not. But of any ideology, I think that atheism, we're just a slew of different people. Like,
I mean, for what it's worth, it's going to be hard to get 50% of your audience to be atheist anyway, because
100%.
there aren't a lot of atheists that exist. Percentage-wise, they're as rare as we are, and pagans are pretty rare too.
The ones that do exist, there's no set worldview. So like, you can be extremely left.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense, because if I'm chatting with
right.
you, even if you introduce me as that Christian vlogger, after our hangout, people will have a pretty good idea of if whether or not they'd be interested in anything else I have to say.
Yeah.
The name of my show won't shift it one way or the other.
But I think that the name of your show can communicate the atmosphere that you want to provide, and that's why I suggested the name that I did.
Yeah, the name is important. I will say that. You was here when I changed my name. It was a massive failure because my new name didn't convey what the channel was about.
Yeah. So, and then you went back to something different. It's no longer the Raging Atheist.
It's just a Raging Atheist now. Yeah.
Why?
Because the implied that I was the Raging Atheist, and I'm not. I'm one of many. I think a lot of atheists' natural progression, natural stages is anger, is rage. So I didn't want to be the Raging Atheist, and a Raging Atheist. I don't know. It's just a broader statement, I think.
You do know I will forever refer to you as the Raging Atheist. I don't think
everybody does.
Okay, cool. As long as that's understood every time. Because I've told you that I actually get to share our story and how we've developed this friendship over the years at different events. Even when you were Nakasuchi, I still called you that, the Raging Atheist.
Yeah. And everybody does. Like, even John, like, when I changed it back, he's like, "Why didn't you change it back to the Raging Atheist?" And I'm like, "Well, it's not really that different, but it is different."
So how many people know you as Nak?
Oh, everybody.
All of his friends.
Yeah, everybody now. Like, more people call me Nak or Naka than they actually call me my real name in life. So.
I used to call you TRA.
Yeah.
Some people call me doesn't TRA. Flow off the tongue nearly as well as Nak. I think Nak is awesome.
Thank you.
Especially, I think I remember you telling me the impact, the meaning of Nakasuchi. It was something about bear. It was your native.
Bear.
Yeah, your native name. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Nak is so much cooler.
Yeah, I think so too. And that has been the one thing. Even though Nakasuchi as the name of the channel didn't work, that has been one compliment that I have always gotten is, "Wow, that's cool." Like, a lot of people think I stole it from anime.
Yeah, I thought it was Japanese when I first heard it.
Japanese, and then I get to tell them the story, and the story.
Oh, it's an awesome way to let me tell you about my journey.
Yeah. So that's one thing that because when I first started doing YouTube, I actually used my real name, and
that's always scary to do that on the internet.
Yeah, and
you know what? I'm going to be doing that in my rebranding.
Yeah, it's
the
scary.
channel is going to be just my name, and I'll have different shows like Hollowed Ground or whatever it is that we end up calling it. Which, if I didn't say so, thank you for that suggestion. It actually, I like where it's going because it does communicate what the space is intended for. So I'll play with variations of that and bounce that around. But thank you for that.
Richard Madsen in the chat suggested Hollowed Hall.
Hollowed Hall. Why is hall better than ground?
The alliteration, probably.
Oh, fair.
I don't know. I think I prefer Hollowed Ground because there's those connotations. There's tradition there. Which I guess Hollowed Hall would have tradition too.
Hollowed Halls has a meaning. What are Hollowed Halls? Holy, consecrated, the church stands on hallowed. Interesting. Yeah. There's like Hollowed Halls is a thing. Apparently, I've never heard that before, but yeah.
Messenger Reveals suggested exploring theology.
Yeah, I appreciate the suggestion. I'm not down with the connotation of that. I think that's more in line with that Christian vlogger type of
brand. I think I agree. That's more along the lines of what you were doing before.
Yeah, we had to do a similar rebranding with polyology. We ended up rebranding as Sticks and Stonehenge because we felt that polyology was more like study of polytheism and was kind of scholarly, and we were covering like political topics and goings on and stuff. So Sticks and Stonehenge kind of gave you an idea that it was all of the different pagan perspectives about all of the different things.
And y'all have to also know that what he's doing it at 100,000 subs. Like you were over 100,000 subs, weren't you?
No, I'm at like...
You never got over... But like you're right at 91,000 now.
Yeah.
So like you have a huge platform and you're deciding just to change it up. I actually find that admirable. I think that takes some bravery. I know other people have done it in the past. Like The Amazing Atheist did it, trying to run away from his right-wing shit, I think. And it didn't work out for him and he went back to The Amazing Atheist. I think yours is going to work out for you because I do think that for what you're trying to do, I think you're actually really good at it. And I think that you're going to get what you want from it. You just got to be patient because I think at first it could, you might see some negativity, things going in the reverse direction. But I think if you stick with it, I think you're going to win. I think you're pretty much going to succeed at whatever you try to do.
He's talking from experience.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I really appreciate that. The Messenger Reveal says a raging atheist should be called "Wish people would accept me not being the raging atheist anymore because I grew the F up."
Well, I mean, the funny thing is,
that
like
just
Theo
rolls
was
right
saying,
off the tongue so well.
Theo was saying earlier, he's not even raging. It's like well, the thing is Justin didn't give him a reason to get pissed off. I have had Naka get so mad he yelled over me when I was trying to be a moderator before. Like he still gets pissed. Yeah. It just takes a bit more to get him that pissed.
Oh, well, maybe one of these days I'll find something to get him pissed off about.
It is what I spoke to though earlier in the stream with Richard when this gets brought up, because people do see me rage, but I try to bring, like, I rage against people that deserve it. Like they genuinely come in here, read off a script. They don't necessarily believe what they're reading, or they're coming in just trying to troll and just trying to be suggestive or extreme. And I pick up on that, and my response to it usually is brutality. So but if you come at me and you're respectful, like Justin came at me when he didn't have to be respectful. He had every right in the world to be disrespectful back to me for some of the things that I said in my first video. Anybody that was around when I first started this channel, I was worse. I was a lot worse.
So Naka,
it's just like, if you come at me respectful, I'm going to tend to be respectful back, even if Naka, I disagree. Go ahead. Can
we ask Justin the most important question before we sign off for the night?
Yes, and I do have, like, Justin, after the stream, before you go, I'm filming for my patrons with guests now, so I got like 2 questions, and then
I'll stick around for it, no problem.
Okay, so Justin, is a hot dog a sandwich?
Yeah, you want to be part of the broader community.
Why not? Absolutely. I say yes. My vote is yes.
Oh, well, I guess you're going to be included in the sandwich epistemology debates. You have to do at least one troll episode where you invite more than one of us in for sandwich epistemology.
I would love that. That would be so fun.
It is an ongoing joke debate in our community. What constitutes a sandwich, and is this a sandwich?
It probably depends on which direction you start eating it from. On one side it could be a sandwich, on the other side it's more of a popsicle.
Okay, so knock the chat's about to turn into a dumpster fire. We got a hot dog isn't a sandwich and pineapples go on pizza.
Yeah, and that's from a fellow Christian. So
nice.
Pineapples go on
Joe
pizza.
is a Facebook friend of mine.
and Joe has followed me on Twitter for quite a while. Has been great. Another Christian that I just thoroughly enjoy, and another Christian that will be on the show. We're going to get him on the show as well.
Love it.
Well, Knock, if you remember, I told you that I had a friend over yesterday. She actually tuned in for this particular stream because she ended up subscribing to you so she could catch my stream. So she's been hanging out all night. Awesome. She hasn't popped into the chat or anything because she does that, but I wanted to give her a shout out really quick because she actually decided to tune in, and I let her know what the times were for both the streams I was going to be on today.
Awesome.
Thank you for
we're
joining.
doing shout outs. I want to give a shout out to my friend Caleb, who runs the Instagram page Humans of Adventism, which is stories from people in my church, and he religiously watches anything that involves you and I and like this whole journey. He's actually the guy who's helping me produce this show, and he's helping me with your episode in particular.
Oh, that's sweet. Yeah, so
Caleb is an awesome dude. He'd be someone I'd be so proud for you to meet.
Yeah, I would love to meet him and tell him I said hello, and we'll meet
for sure. He lives in Portland.
Yeah,
he lives in Portland. So when you're out here,
yeah, and that's gonna happen this year. I'm going to Faithless Forum.
Wait, you say this year as in 2019 or within the next 12 months?
2020. It'll happen in 2020.
Awesome.
I'm gonna hold you to it. I'm gonna be. My first trip is going to be Faithless Forum, and then after that, I'm going to plan a real vacation. That's not going to be like me going and hanging out with a bunch of atheists.
Knock, you better get your ass up here. Like, if you're in fucking Portland, you have no excuse not to get your butt up here and say hi.
This is true. And hey, by the way, just so we're on the same page, if you come out to Portland and you'd like to, you're welcome to stay with Emily and I. We'd love to have you.
I do have a buddy somewhere there in Oregon area, somewhere around there. But yeah, we'll work.
That's a very big place.
I'm a very big person.
This is true. You are freaking tall.
Yeah, I'm like top 3% in the world. Not to brag.
Oh wow! Hey, wow! There you go.
I want to go to Faithless Forum. 2020 tickets aren't on sale yet, but I actually want to go since like 90% of all of my friends in the community are there.
Yeah, you should. It's where we go to meet each other. So this will be my first time going, and I'll get the chance to meet all these people that I've not met yet, but I've been talking to
in Dallas, Texas. I'm not even kidding. I'm gonna pencil this in my calendar because that sounds like a really fun experience.
Oh yeah, a bunch of atheists. You'll love it.
I'm serious. If nothing for work comes up, I would love to make that a priority.
Oh, I would have you, and I'm sure that they would have you, and you would have nothing but conversation the whole time you're there. Some good, some bad.
Oh, I'd be down for both of them. That'd be super cool. All right, I'm putting that in. I'm just looking at the website now. How much are tickets normally?
They're not expensive, I don't think. I can't remember what they were last year. I'll ask Sirs, because Sirs went, and I'll email you.
Sweet.
So yeah. If that happens, then everybody that goes to Faithless Forum this year can thank me for bringing the Christian.
You're the party pooper.
I mean, to be fair, like Sirs brought the pagan, so.
Yeah, Sirs did bring a pagan, so I'm not setting precedent here.
I guess even a pagan would be considered out of bounds, huh?
Oh yeah, still a theist.
Yeah, we tend to have more in common with atheists than most Christians do. Like, I know a lot of atheists don't see it that way, but like those of us who are allied with the atheist community, we have the same goals, which is to get religion the fuck out of government.
Which is pretty much how
you know what, that's actually a shared goal of mine. So my specific denomination of Christianity is Seventh-day Adventism. If you ever watched the movie Hacksaw Ridge, I think is what it was called.
Hacksaw Ridge.
Hacksaw Ridge. Oh, all right.
I didn't pronounce it right. That dude was a Seventh-day Adventist, and one of the core beliefs of our church is
Not put
the
Tony's
importance
vote up.
of separation of church and state.
Oh. Yeah, don't tell him it's your turn to bring the human sacrifice.
God damn it, Knock, you told him.
I'm sorry, Tony.
That's all.
Yeah, that's one thing I do like in a future discussion we have. I do want to delve into Seventh Day because I should know more about it. Seeing how Grand Rapids is Grand Rapids, and I went to college there. Spent 3 years of my life there. I should know more about it, but I don't. So I would love to have a conversation with you just about your Seventh Day Adventism, maybe some of the differences.
You know what? I could make this as like an excuse to come out to Battle Creek again. I could bring someone. Here's my idea. See if you like this idea. I could bring someone like relatively high up in the church structure, like someone who operates within office, at least on North America basis. So like fairly up there as far as the hierarchy is concerned. And it would be fun for him to tour you around your home city.
Yeah.
That's one of the birthplaces of this church that I am a part of. And him
really?
tell you about Seventh-day Adventism, and you just to ask him like a million questions and to create like a 1 hour mini doc on it. That'd be kind of interesting.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Honestly,
I would totally be down for that.
Justin, like you saying you were vegetarian should have tipped me off that you were Seventh-day Adventist, considering the Loma Linda health studies were some of the most oft cited when talking about vegetarianism and health.
Oh, heck yeah, blue zones. So my great aunt,
my background's in nutrition, by the way.
Oh, very cool. That's awesome. My great aunt lived to be 106. Literally just woke up one day, was like, you know what? I think I'm good. Like her mind's still there. Her body was still functioning. Like other than hard of hearing, like she was good. But just woke up one day, is like, I think I'm good. I think I've lived my life and just decided to pass. And like, so she stopped eating. And I think it was like 24 hours later or 48 hours later, with the entire family surrounding her, singing songs and encouraging each other, she just fell asleep. But like the testament of healthy living, the testament of a plant-based lifestyle was just so evident in my family.
Yeah, you told me that story before, and it's amazing that you could live to that age, and I don't think I could make it to 106, honestly. Like,
you're gonna have to accelerate the quitting smoking part.
Yeah, definitely that. But like say George Burns lived to what 96, and he was a heavy smoker, smoked cigars. I don't know if I could make it
possible, but I just think statistically,
statistically you're not going to. I'm definitely playing Russian roulette at this point in my life.
And you got a daughter to take care of, man. You got to take that health thing seriously,
Yeah, it is actually a constant topic with me. It's something that I'm thinking about, constantly trying to change a lot of stuff about my life. The smoking is
hey, can I try something?
The thing I want to quit the most.
Speaking of your daughter, Knock, by the way, it is 3 a.m. over there. You need to get to bed soon.
Yeah, no, yeah. So we do have to end this, but go ahead and ask your question, and then we'll get out of here. And I'll ask my 2 real quick questions for Patreon, and then I'm going to bed.
Cool. Can I? I mean, you could totally say no, and I won't be offended in the least bit. But on the whole smoking thing, I believe as a Christian in the power of prayer. Would you be open to me just saying a word of blessing and a prayer over you and your smoking addiction?
Oh yeah. I don't ever have issues with people praying for me.
Would that be a weird way to end this stream? I know that I know what.
Do it in private then, rather than using it on the channel.
Yeah. You can. My audience would probably never forgive me, but I personally take no issue with anybody ever praying for me, because like to them they're doing a very, very good thing. So I don't believe in prayer. I often speak out against prayer when it comes to issues like gun violence and stuff like that. But I've never had an issue with people doing what they like to do, especially if they're trying to help me quit smoking.
Yeah, so cool. Let's do it afterwards, after the Patreon then.
Yeah, that'll be good. So we're gonna get out of here, guys. I want to thank that Christian vlogger Justin Khoe for coming once again, gracing my channel with his presence. Not too often I get a chance to talk to Christians that I actually find agreeable, that we can find common ground and have more in common than just constantly bickering and yelling and me being raging. And I love taking these opportunities. Maybe my audience don't like it so much, but I think that they need to see a raging atheist interacting when he can in a positive direction. And we should be accepting of anybody that's willing to be a decent person, even if we disagree with fundamental beliefs that they have. So with that being said, guys, I'm going to get out of here. Sub to Justin Khoe. Right now it's still that Christian vlogger. Go ahead and sub. He's got a ton of videos. They're Christian content. I actually enjoyed them, so you'll probably enjoy them. Especially the work he did with Matthias was brilliant. So go check that out.
Yeah, if you're not a Christian or not spiritually leaning in one way or another, we do have several shows and episodes that are, tackling some of the more controversial issues that affect people of faith, and
which is one of the things that I've always liked about you is you're not afraid to have those hard conversations, to where a lot of Christians do run away from the gay question or questions about gun violence, gun laws, abortion. You will have those conversations. Allie is going to get a chance to plug her channel because I didn't let her the last time. So go ahead, Allie.
I also wanted to be a tiny bit spiteful for like 30 seconds.
Oh, please do.
Please indulge.
MR finally said something that annoys me. MR says prayers only work when the recipient believes in them. So to pray for someone who doesn't believe is pointless. You're kind of limiting the power of your God there, buddy. Like,
and also that
you're mistaking prayers for magic, because like magic doesn't work when the recipient doesn't believe in it. But prayers, last I checked, the gods can do as they damn well see fit. So you might be saying your God doesn't want to help people who don't believe in him, and that would kind of fuck up the omnibenevolence of your God. But don't limit the power of your God like that,
or the omnipotence of said God. Yeah, I just think that was ridiculous.
Yeah, that's kind of. I'm sorry. I had to get that tiny bit of spite out of my system because don't limit the power of your quad omni God there, buddy.
Well, and to Messenger's defense a little bit, he always portrays himself as not your conventional Christian. So cool. He does have different ideas, but I think that he might have put his foot in his mouth on that one.
He literally admits he's wrong in his own last post. He says it says in scripture that Jesus healed very few people in his hometown due to the lack of their belief. So when you first said that prayer only works if they believe, and then secondly said Jesus healed only a few people who didn't believe, you're literally contradicting yourself right there.
No, he's saying that he only healed a few people because there's no because all those people didn't believe. So basically, he's only saying he only healed the believers.
If I'm reading the previous one, he was talking about how he only healed a few people who weren't believing. But
yeah, Jesus healed very few people because of a lack of their belief.
Yeah.
I think that was bad phrasing, giving the statement that he made afterwards. So I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt and basically say that, he's saying that his God is spiteful and doesn't help people who don't believe in him. In which case, again, you're challenging the omnibenevolence here. There.
Yeah. Yeah, and to say that Justin's prayer for me wouldn't help is actually inaccurate. Maybe I wouldn't think that his prayer would help, but Justin's concern does. Allie's concern does. Concern heightens your awareness and your concern for yourself. Honestly, I probably would still be procrastinating quitting if I didn't have people constantly coming at me and telling me how I need to do what I said I was going to do and quit. To where I don't.
I threatened to find your address and send you patches earlier.
Yeah. I mean, it shows a level of concern. So, and it's what, like my dad prays for me every night. I'm not going to sit there and tell my dad to stop praying for his son, because that's what he does, and he puts power in it. And I don't have any evidence that it doesn't work. I don't have evidence that it does. I personally don't. I don't like it when people send thoughts and prayers for every freaking act of violence that has ever happened.
I mean, if there's something better, if there's something more active that you could do, you should probably do it. But if there's nothing else you can do, like when you were in the hospital, I was like, "Hey, can I put an offering on my altar for you?" Yeah, and you were perfectly fine with that.
Yeah, I'm very consistent with this. I'm not such a hardline atheist that I'm going to just tell you not to be you. Like, please be you. Thank you for your concern. And yeah, it doesn't even really make me uncomfortable because I went through it my whole life. I used to be a person that prayed for people. We need to stop being so damn judgmental of everybody, because then we become what we fight against. I don't want to be that judgmental prick anymore. I'm trying not to be. It's hard when you got Jesus is Lord in your chat, or Nephilim 3 earlier. It makes it hard. But then I have people like Justin here. So there is a counterbalance. Yeah. Not all Christians are bad. Not all atheists eat babies.
You see, saying that God can't do something for an unbeliever and you pray for them, you're putting the power of prayer in their hands and not in said God's hands.
Well, and on top of it, it says, if you doubt, you won't receive. But that's about you and your faith. That's not about the recipient's faith. Like, if you yourself is a believer, and, maybe God is the kind of, grumpy deity that is going to be like, well, you have doubts in your heart, so I'm not going to help you. Like, I guess that'd be up to his prerogative if that were the case. Like, let's grant that premise for 30 seconds. That's about you still. That does not prove your statement that if the person that you're praying for doubts, that they won't receive anything from it. Like, that's putting a limitation on your God.
Yeah, and like I said, I literally do receive something from it. I'm receiving concern from friends, which is usually a prime motivator of any human change, is, an accelerator from those around you. I'm not going to quit smoking on my own. I've been smoking off and on since I was 6 years old. I grew up smoking cigarettes. It is not only a physical addiction, it is a brain thing, so it's not going to be easy when I quit. I'm going to probably be an asshole. Probably streams will cut down for a while, like I'm not going to.
Or it'll just be more raging, and this will be for great content.
There'll be a whole lot more streams, and I'll just be going off on everything. Who knows what's going to happen? What I do know is if I don't stop quitting, I'm going to die.
Cool. Hey, well, real quick, let's just say thanks to Knock for being so patient with his time. Allie and I are both on the West Coast, so it's only slightly past midnight, but for Knock, it's like 3 a.m. Yeah. I know you work hard. I know you have a lot of duties as a father. You're taking care of everything. So the fact that you would wait up this late, or you would wait up this early and still have to get up tomorrow for work and all that, just mad respect, super appreciate you, and I'm super glad that I get to have you and Allie as friends.
Well, thank you so much. I don't have to work tomorrow, but I do have to be up at 7 a.m.
Oh, never mind, I take it back.
And then, but I do get to come home and go back to sleep. So I'll get my sleep tomorrow. I just probably won't get much video work done because I'll sleep till noon. I'm cool with that, Joe.
So now that I'm done being grumpy with another theist, I'll actually plug my channel.
Yeah, because that's what we wanted you to do it before that last 10-minute tangent.
I couldn't fucking help myself. That was my ADHD. But I needed to be grumpy because don't do that to the gods. The gods have their own agency. Don't tell them what they can and cannot do. That's hubris. That ain't so good for you, bud.
Yeah.
So anyway, we just rebranded, as I mentioned. My channel is Sticks and Stonehenge. I co-host it along with Callan via the Heathen, Wolf the Red, who's also a very good friend of the channel, along with Callan, and Singetto of Belgay, who is himself a I'm trying to remember what he actually calls himself. He practices the Celtic faith. Specifically Celtic faith, but I don't think he calls himself a druid. I'd have to ask. So Via is an eclectic. Wolf and Callan are both heathens, and I am a Hellenist. And we do live streams. We used to do them every Thursday. We're still discussing what day to move them to because Wolf's schedule keeps him at work late. So we are competing with Hammered Out now if we try to do them on Thursdays. But we do streams on all kinds of different topics from a pagan perspective, everything everything from like we talked about Greta Thunberg not too long ago. We talked about alliances within the pagan community and the atheist community, and interfaith alliances and what some of the barriers are for that and why they're important. We've talked about a number of different topics. We actually talked about anti-theism and like how to deal with it. So if you're interested in any sort of different pagan topics, we're going to be doing response videos to spirit science coming up pretty soon. And we are also going to be gearing up to do Mythological Mondays again, which is we're going to be doing animated shorts with a bunch of different myths from all of our different traditions.
Yeah, sounds awesome.
Very cool. I feel like I have so much to learn.
Yeah, I need to get over to Sticks and Stonehenge more. But I'm usually working when you guys are streaming. But closely aligned channel to mine.
You have us on all the time.
Yeah. These are my pagans. Trump has his black guy. I have my pagans.
There's a whole cluster of us. There's like you have Callan and I and Wolf on fairly frequently, and every so often Ocean graces us with his presence. Yeah.
Ocean's a busy man. But yeah, we are going to get out of here. I'm going to ask 2 quick questions that I didn't figure out what they were going to be like I was supposed to during the stream. So I'm going to figure those out. There will be a That Christian Vlogger Patreon episode. Sometime in the future, these episodes will end up on the channel, but I'll probably do like Utah Outcasts. It'll be like 6 months after they originally aired on Patreon. They'll go on the channel. So 6 months from now, you'll be able to see the questions I asked That Christian Vlogger. If you don't want to wait 6 months, become a patron. Easy as that. So with that, we'll see you guys soon.